Hello everyone, welcome to the University of Kent. My name is Dr. Sweta Rajan-Rankin and I'm a senior lecturer in social work, and I'm also the social work admissions lead. I'd really like to kind of welcome your interest in applying for social work. We have a number of different programs, including an undergraduate, master's program, step up to social work, and the social work degree apprenticeship. If you've already applied for a BA in social work program at the University of Kent, there are a number of real advantages to thinking of this as your future career option. The first and most important thing to think about is why social work is important and what does it mean to be a social worker. Social workers have a protected title and we are registered with Social Work England, which is our regulatory body. So basically, in order to be a social worker, you have to be qualified. You have to undergo a specific professional training. They are what we call PSRB requirements, or Professional Statutory Review Board requirements, which mean that you have to sign up to the social work register in order to be a social worker. So not everyone can be a social worker, although there are many ways to help people. If you're interested in helping people, if you're interested in empowering individuals and families, if you're interested in social justice, then you can definitely consider social work as an option for you. However, it's important for you to recognize that social work is different from other ways of helping people or other helping professions. For instance, when we think about social work and social care, there are distinct differences between these two roles. Social work involves assessing people's needs. I think that's the most important aspect of social work. We work with a very wide range of service users. These could be children and families or adult social care, working with older adults, for example, in care homes. The kinds of problems we address in social work are absolutely span the entirety of social problems. So, for instance, you could be working with vulnerable families who live in poverty. You could be working with children who might be at risk of neglect or abuse. You might be working with young people who might be excluded from school for various reasons. You could be working with young people with learning disabilities or special educational needs. So you could be working, for instance, in a school setting. You could be working with families in conflict. So families that might be undergoing problems such as domestic violence, substance misuse. We also support families that might have mental health problems or what we call complex problems, a whole host of different issues that families might be undergoing. In adult social care, you might be working with older people who have care needs. So this could be anything from older people who have dementia to just older people who have physical needs or social care needs that cannot be met within the family home. You might be providing advice, for instance, for older people to have assisted living. So how you could change accommodations within their own homes so that they can live healthy and productive lives. This could be things like making amendments to their housing situation, providing rails and so forth, so that you reduce risk of falling. The next thing to think about in relation to social work is the fact that we do engage with communities and service users. And a very important aspect to think of here is how service users can be involved in making and shaping their own decisions. So a very crucial aspect of social work is what we call partnership working. Social workers have quite a lot of power, and therefore we have to make sure that we don't abuse this power. And we engage in partnership working with our service users and carer communities so that they can become empowered and actually have more say in what happens to them. So when we think about service users, we're thinking about anyone we work with, young people, families, older people. And here we want to really think about the fact that, the service user motto often is nothing about us without us. So the need for service user voice in shaping social work experience is absolutely crucial. The other thing that we need to think about here is that when we rely on information provided by service users, quite often there might be different perspectives within the same family setting. So social workers have to balance out the needs of different service user groups within the same case they might be working on. The other thing to think about is risk. So social workers fundamentally work on issues of risk, and our job is to minimize risk and harm. So in the context of young people or children and families, you might be looking at how to reduce risk to vulnerable children. And this could be dealt with through resolutions within the family, or in extreme cases, removing the child from the family and placing them in kinship care or fostering or adoption settings. In all of these activities, we are absolutely guided by the law. And when we think about statutory duties of care, it means that social workers have to work within the confines of the law. And we have legal obligations to safeguard vulnerable children and vulnerable people. And we do this by ensuring that the key task of social work is keeping people safe and minimizing risk and harm. And we do this through a series of activities which involve assessment, so assessment of need, assessment of risk. And we also do this in other ways, for instance, through creating care plans, care management plans. And as I said before, working with families. The next thing we need to think about in relation to why social work is important is our values. Social work is profoundly a value-based activity. It's not possible to be a social worker without having a very strong and deep commitment to social justice. And this quite often involves being able to say that an anti-discriminatory or anti-oppressive approach to working with people is important. So values of social work would be things like respect, confidentiality, equality and social justice, empathy, valuing service user voices. All of these things are profoundly important in social work. So it's as important for a social worker to have these personal qualities and values as it is for them to have skills and expertise and knowledge. So all of these things are in confluence, I think, together when we think about social work. Finally, something you might want to think about as an applicant is social work for you? It's a very, very demanding profession, but an incredibly rewarding one as well. There's not very many careers where you can feel like you're touching people's lives every day and you're changing people's lives every day. So for this reason, I find it incredibly rewarding to be a social worker. Social workers often do not get a very positive image in the media. And despite this, they can make profound differences in people's lives. And I think that might be something that if you're considering a future in social work, you could think about for yourselves. Finally, a couple of things that I would suggest applicants think about when they apply for social work are readiness. Are you ready to be a social work student? What kinds of preparations might you need to make? And this includes a realistic understanding of the course requirements. So if you're already working or engaging in part-time work, you might have to think about stopping that, because this is a full-time course. You will have, modules that are taught in university. Of course, with COVID-19, such teaching is now happening online or through a blended forum, putting together both online as well as face-to-face teaching opportunities. But the key thing to remember here is that you will also be engaging in 170 days pardon me, 170 days of placement and practice learning. So you will have 70 days in the second year where you'll be placed in an organization. This could be a statutory organization like Kent County Council or Medway County Council, or it could be a private or voluntary sector placement, such as Demelza or Action, Save the Children, or any other number of our placement partners. So when you think about being a social work student, you have to be really clear. This is a huge commitment. It's quite demanding, but hugely rewarding as well. And then you might want to think about bursaries and financial implications of studying for 3 years, childcare. If you or other caring needs, you might have to sort out before you start the course, and multitasking, right? So you will have assignments, but at the same time, you might have placement work that has to be delivered around the same timeline. So really thinking about how you'll manage the workload of being a social worker. You might want to also consider preparing for a social work interview process by looking at a number of really useful reading materials. So one thing I would recommend to people is looking at the Social Work England website. This is the regulatory body for social work in England, and it's really important that you are aware of what social work is, what the statutory duties are, and what are the professional capabilities, for instance, or the values required to be a social worker. Preparation for the interview process is really important. The more you know about social work and the more you read, the better you'll perform in the interview. You might want to look at websites like Community Care Online or Social Care Institute for Excellence, which has really useful articles about social work. One thing that applicants quite often stumble upon is a lack of core understanding of social work practice. So do as much reading as you can before you come for the interview process. That's really important. In terms of the interview process itself, we have a multi-stage applicant process. So first you'll apply via UCAS, which you've probably already done. You then will be invited for a written test if you meet our entry-level requirements, which for the BA social work program are a BBB equivalent. And we also require a GCSE English at C and maths at C as well, and its equivalent. So then you'll be asked to complete an online written test. You have, it's a timed test. So this basically will have to, or it will involve completing the test in a short amount of time. Once you submit that written test, it'll be marked. And then if you're successful at that stage, you can then move on to the next stage, which is where you'll be invited for a selection day. The selection day at the moment with COVID-19 does unfortunately involve an online process. Otherwise, we would be meeting you face to face. But it will involve a two-stage process. Firstly, you'll be put in groups and you will be engaging in what's known as an observed group discussion. And the wonderful thing about these processes are that they are actually run by service users. So you'll have an academic and a service user who will ask you to discuss a case scenario in a group setting, and then you'll be assessed on that. And then there will also be an opportunity for you to have a interview, a one-on-one interview with someone like myself, an academic, and also a practitioner who's a registered social worker. So you will be interviewed in this way, and you should find out the results of your admissions process within 3 weeks. The next set of things to think about during the application process is certain checks that we have to do to make sure that you are suitable to be on the social work program. And this involves a criminal convictions disclosure. So we'll ask you to complete a form about whether you've ever had or spent or unspent criminal convictions. I see there are some questions, so I'll try and answer them as we go along, and I'll finish fairly soon. Basically, the criminal convictions process just literally means you have to tell us whether you've ever had, any issues that involved a penalty or a caution, criminal caution. And once you tell us this, we'll then engage in another process involving a more detailed interview. Having criminal convictions does not necessarily mean that we won't accept you on the program. It just means that we'll have to have a further discussion with you about this. We'll also be asking you to complete a health declaration form, and this is primarily so we can support you better. So if you've got any issues with your health or disability, we have an absolutely excellent student support service provision, and who will be able to support you. So I think as we've come to the end of this talk, I hope you found that useful. If there are any questions, do please ask me directly or in chat, and I'm very, very happy to answer them. We've got about 5 minutes to go. Mary, you have a question. Do you want to ask the question, or shall I just answer in chat? Mary's question is about which campus the social work classes will take place on. And so the social work classes are based on the Medway campus. So this is in Chatham Maritime. We will expect very much that because of the coronavirus, we'll have classes online like this, using Zoom or Teams, but also some face-to-face teaching, which will happen on the Medway campus. And then this question was student finance. Yes, so I think it'll be fair, Katie, if I said actually any questions about student finance, it's much better for you to get advice from GK Union or from Aniki Leitman, who's the Medway operations manager, because I don't want to kind of advise you inappropriately. But one thing I can say is that all applicants can get well, you can apply for an NHS bursary, which covers the placement years, year 2 and 3. But there are always fewer bursaries than there are places. So, it is about how you, are able to manage these, your performance on the interview day. And last thing I'll say before I finish up is that your performance in the first year of the program really matters for BA social work. So your marks, your attendance will all ensure that you get the bursary in the second year. Thank you so much for your interest. Thank you, Katie. Is that fine? Shall I finish off now? Yep. Perfect. Thanks so much. Bye.